I'm an Android user. And no, I'm not here to tell you that I'm switching to the iPhone or that I was wrong about the iPhone or any of the other 1,000 sins YouTubers commit to capture your clicks. What I will do is share my thoughts on the iPhone 14 Pro as an Android user after 3 weeks. And to be frank, it's something you've probably heard before. It's not really about the phone.
For me, the joy of the iPhone 14 Pro doesn't come from the device itself. As cool as the new Tamagotchi-enabled Dynamic Island may be, and as much as I appreciate its new camera capabilities, let's be honest, this phone is a lot like the 13, which was a lot like the 12. For me, the delight and, sure, the envy comes in when I sit down at one of my favorite coffee shops and toggle my Wi-Fi hotspot right from my laptop. I don't even need to take the iPhone out of the bag. Or when I airdrop a photo between iPhone, iPad, and MacBook wirelessly, locally, instantly. I still get a vestigial thrill from dropping the iPhone onto a MagSafe charger, the only modern mobile accessory to replicate the reliability of Palm's old Touchstone from 2009. And inefficient though it may be, I love using that same MagSafe tech to recharge on the go with the battery pack that slaps on to power up. No cables required. The iPhone hasn't been just about the phone for years. It's a fragment of a larger picture, and you can only change a puzzle piece so much if you still want it to fit. Oh, and Apple enjoys advantages beyond the ecosystem edge. As an Android user, I'm not happy to say this, but many apps continue to be better optimized for the iPhone, partly because developers can better focus their efforts on fewer devices. Example, I host a Spotify live show every week, and I would prefer to use my Galaxy Fold 4 for that broadcast because of its big screen. But I've effectively been forced to use the iPhone because of how much more consistently the app behaves on iOS. Ditto that old chestnut Instagram, whose stories only seem properly formatted for screens that basically match the iPhone's. The restaurant reservation platform Resy was so bad at maintaining its Android apps that it gave up and went all in on iOS. Think about that. The iPhone has become so popular among affluent Americans that an app owned by American Express decided it only needed to be on the iPhone. Crazy. And then there's notifications. Apple does a less elegant job of organizing them than Android, and it makes you do double the swiping to get to them one-handed. But those notifications always hit my iPhone first. Gmail, Google Voice, Instagram DM, you name it, the iPhone lets me know within moments, while my Android phones might not tell me for many long minutes thereafter.
You know, I'm often asked by the 70% of global smartphone users who use Android why 50% of Americans prefer the iPhone. And all that stuff I just mentioned factors in a big way.
There's also a darker side to the iPhone lock-in question, which I'll cover in a second. But first, I want to touch on the cameras. And I do mean touch on because, honestly, these cameras are more of the same, which is very good news for the camcorder crew. For several years, I've reserved a permanent slot in my Peak Design bag just for the iPhone. Because for someone like me, who needs to shoot a lot of lifestyle and product footage on the go, but doesn't want to carry a dedicated camera and hates overcomplicated user interfaces, absolutely nothing beats the iPhone for video. The past few weeks with the 14 Pro have given me the opportunity to capture all kinds of shenanigans in every possible lighting condition. The after-dark birth of an artery-threatening culinary creation I've named the Pizza Burger.
You laughed at me, you called me all sorts of names, but my first bite of this was nothing short of heavenly, and I think this is the new reality.
I don't want to admit it.
It's kind of good.
It's pretty good.
What do you know, Kogan? What do you know? Nothing.
Clearly good.
The overcast mid-afternoon tour of my soon-to-be new neighborhood in Brooklyn, from sun shower to double Dumbo rainbow. The sun-soaked San Diego engagement of some dear friends that you should know if you don't already. Congrats, Josh and Issa.
Yes, right. You got it.
Congrats.
Thank you.
I told you this yesterday.
And, of course, all the travels at all the altitudes in between. The much ballyhooed autofocus on the selfie camera hasn't made too notable a difference in my own usage, but I will give a well-earned shout-out to the new action mode stabilization, which kept the shot steady even on this bumpy approach to LaGuardia. Shame it couldn't do anything about the perpetually dirty windows of SkyWest's preternaturally tiny CRJ900s, but one step at a time. Are there downsides? Of course. You've no doubt noticed that lens flare is still pronounced on these cameras, and I expect Google's brand new Pixel 7 to bring some serious heat in low-light photography when it launches later this month. Also, the iPhone's 3x zoom is weak compared to the competition from Samsung. Still, switching between those cameras is even smoother than it already was, which can make for even silkier sponsorship segues.
D-brand. D-brand. That's for you, Adam. That's for you.
Yes, indeed. If the iPhone isn't going to look any different by itself, well, at least you can do something about it. This video is sponsored by dbrand and the new Palettes collection by Ali Abdaal. It's light mode done right, whether you skin the phone directly or the dbrand grip case that gives you that added protection. Dbrand your device at the link in the description. 3 weeks ago, I gave you a quick look at the 3 biggest changes to the iPhone 14 Pro, and since then, the dynamic island has definitely come out on top of those 3. Even as we wait for Apple to provide the Live Activities API to unlock the island's true potential, some developers have already kicked off the fun. Witness the Tamagotchi-like Kitty for the Apollo Reddit client, or the Pong-like Hit the Island game, which reminds me of some of the very first apps for the iPhone in its simplicity and addictive properties. This might bother me more if I watched more full-screen video, but overall, I continue to think this is an excellent approach to dealing with the eyesore of the oversized hole punch. And like the satellite-based emergency SOS feature due to roll out later this year, it's a good feeling knowing the phone's feature set will grow over time. The other changes? Not so much. I thought I'd get used to the new always-on display, but 3 weeks later, I'm still getting fooled multiple times a day into thinking I have a new message waiting because it's just too similar to the standard lock screen. I mean, I love the look of some of these options, and I'm not seeing the battery hit that others have reported. The iPhone 14 Pro routinely outlasts the Fold 4 and Flip 4 I use on a daily basis. But on the whole, I continue to prefer Android manufacturers' always-on displays for quick glanceability that I don't have to go out of my way to customize. And if the cameras and the ecosystem weren't going to keep an iPhone in your pocket, well, the new embedded SIM might. And no, that's not a compliment. Before a recent flight, I tried swapping from the 14 Pro to the Pro Max before takeoff, and, well, the process soaked up 20 minutes between boarding and pushback and was so full of bugs that I actually lost service on both phones. When I took off, I didn't have a phone number. It got fixed later on, and to be fair, this is an edge case. But anyone who says this process, which, by the way, requires an internet connection on both phones, is somehow easier than taking 20 seconds to swap a physical card, no, that's just not true. Oh, and as discovered by iFixit, Apple did nothing with the space it saved by removing the physical SIM tray assembly in this year's design. Combined with iMessage lock-in and Apple's stubborn refusal to abandon its Lightning connector in favor of the Type-C port used by almost every other product, including the iPad, this forced move toward eSIM feels like just another way to make it harder for iPhone users to leave the Apple ecosystem. Now, that's speculation on my part, but let's remember a bit of history here. Research in Motion's BlackBerry devices were famously so addictive that people called them crackberries, and they were once so ubiquitous that BlackBerry accounted for over 50% of US smartphones and 20% of the global share. Sound familiar? BlackBerry's fall was as swift as it was devastating, and Apple's effort to avoid a similar fate by doing everything it can to keep people from leaving its ecosystem makes a lot of business sense.
When I use the iPhone 14 Pro, I'm put in mind of how I felt when I was trying to review the new MacBook Pro. I have a hard time romanticizing it, or conjuring up the flowery wordplay that I might use to describe the bleeding-edge devices that I actually prefer to carry. Because the iPhone doesn't appeal to the part of me that wants to be reminded that he's living in the future. It appeals to the part of me that sees a phone as a tool for getting things done.
Will it get me to switch from Android? No. But honestly, it wasn't made for me. Someone who values a choice in form factors at the very forefront of the mobile frontier. It was made for Apple users who haven't upgraded in 2 years or more and, want the new one. It's a minimum viable permutation. And if it were a regular phone, that might be an insult. But it's not a regular phone. It's the iPhone. And for the target customer, that's enough. For now. This review was produced following 21 days with an iPhone 14 Pro review sample provided by Apple, but as always, the manufacturer had no creative control or indeed editorial input of any kind, and it did not provide compensation in exchange for this content. Please subscribe to the Mr. Mobile on YouTube so you don't miss future coverage of iPhones, Androids, wearables, laptops, and other weird and wonderful tech from the mobile world of 2022 and beyond. Till next time, from Michael Fisher, thanks for watching. And stay mobile, my friends.